Welcome to the pashhat channel. Today we explain Genesis chapter 40 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Picture this for a second. You do absolutely everything right. You act with total integrity. You use your God-given gifts to help the people around you. You even correctly predict the future and pull someone out of a deep psychological slump. And yet, after all of that incredible effort, you're left behind, completely forgotten in a dark dungeon. Man, it's brutal, but that is the exact agonizing reality we're going to explore in today's explainer. This is just an incredibly profound, character-defining chapter in the life of Joseph, and we are going to unpack every single detail of it together.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start with a brief introduction and context. Check out the prisoners and their dreams, dive into the interpretations and the outcomes, clarify the text itself, draw out some real-world life lessons, and then wrap it all up with a recap.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Introduction and Brief Context. So verses 1 through 4 really set the stage for us. Some time has actually passed since Joseph was thrown into prison. He's currently locked up in an Egyptian dungeon, but this isn't just your run-of-the-mill jail. It's located specifically inside the house of the captain of the guard, Potiphar. Now, right around this time, two very important guys, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker of the king of Egypt, somehow offend Pharaoh. The text doesn't explicitly tell us what they did. Maybe it was a plot to poison his food and drink, which was literally their main job to protect against. Whatever the offense was, Pharaoh is absolutely furious. He takes these high-ranking officials and tosses them into the exact same custody where Joseph is being held. And you have to notice the deep irony here. The captain of the guard actually puts Joseph in charge of them. So even as a lowly prisoner, Joseph is put to work acting as a servant to the very men who used to serve the king.
Moving right along to Section 2, the prisoners and their dreams.
In verses 5 through 7, after these two guys have been languishing in custody for a while, something really unusual happens. On the exact same night, both of these officials have deeply disturbing dreams. The Hebrew text is super precise about this. It notes that each man dreamt a dream, and each dream had its own specific meaning. So they wake up the next day, and they are just completely rattled. When Joseph comes in that morning to attend to them, he takes one look and realizes how distraught they are. And wow, this moment tells us so much about Joseph's character. Think about it. He's a prisoner himself. He's suffering unjustly, dealing with his own trauma of being betrayed by his brothers and falsely accused. Yet he still has the empathy and presence of mind to look at these two men and ask, hey, why are your faces so sad today? He doesn't just do his chores and keep his head down. He truly sees the people around him.
The officials reply, "We've had a dream, and there's no one here to interpret it." See, in ancient Egypt, dreams were a massive deal. They were considered direct messages from the divine. And Pharaoh's court was packed with highly trained magicians whose entire job was to decode them. Being locked away from the court, these guys feel completely hopeless. But then, look at Joseph's profound response in verse 8. He says, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." This is a huge theological shift. Joseph claims absolutely zero magical powers for himself. He doesn't try to play the sorcerer to manipulate these powerful men. He establishes right out of the gate that his ability comes solely from God, completely taking his own ego out of the equation.
Now for the core of the chapter, Section 3, Interpretations and the Outcomes.
The chief cupbearer steps up first. In verses 9 through 13, he describes his dream with amazing detail. He says, "I saw a vine in front of me, and it had 3 branches." Then, right before his eyes, this vine basically fast-forwards through its whole life cycle. It buds, it blossoms, and the clusters ripen into full grapes almost instantly. He continues, saying he had Pharaoh's cup in his hand, so he took the grapes, actively squeezed the juice right into the cup, and physically handed it back to Pharaoh. Joseph listens to all of this and gives him an incredibly favorable interpretation. He explains that the 3 branches, those represent 3 days. He tells the cupbearer that in exactly 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up his head, meaning he's going to restore him to his royal office. The cupbearer is going to go right back to handing Pharaoh his cup, just like he used to do.
But immediately after giving this amazing, life-saving news, Joseph makes this deeply emotional plea in verses 14 and 15. Listen to what he asks. "But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and bring me out of this house." He's looking for an advocate, and he explicitly defends his innocence, saying, "For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also here I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon." In the Hebrew text, the phrase for stolen away uses a doubled verb, gunub t. It really emphasizes the extreme injustice of it all. He was literally kidnapped. He's just desperately hoping this soon-to-be restored official will speak up for him in the halls of power.
So seeing that the cupbearer got such a great interpretation, the chief baker steps up, feeling pretty optimistic. He shares his dream in verses 16 through 19. "Hey, I also had a dream.
I had 3 white baskets on my head, and the top basket was full of all these baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them right out of the basket on my head. Now Joseph is in a really tough spot. He has to deliver a totally grim, unvarnished truth. He tells the baker, well, the 3 baskets also represent 3 days. But in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift your head off your shoulders. He tells him he'll be hanged on a tree and the birds will eat his flesh. It's an absolutely terrifying sentence.
It's really fascinating to stop and compare the literal imagery in these 2 dreams because the visuals themselves were huge clues. The cupbearer's dream was super active, right? He's physically taking the grapes, squeezing them, and handing the cup to the king. He's performing his duty. The baker's dream, on the other hand, is entirely passive. He's literally just standing there like a statue with baskets on his head while the birds steal the king's food. He's completely a victim of his environment. The text uses these simple visual clues to hint at their completely opposite destinies.
So the interpretations are out there, and now the tension in that dungeon must have been incredibly thick. You can almost feel the suspense building as the 3 days pass. Day 1, the dreams are interpreted. Day 2 is spent just agonizingly waiting. One guy is thrilled, the other is terrified. And then we hit day 3. Verse 20 tells us that the 3rd day happened to be Pharaoh's birthday, and he was throwing a massive feast for all his servants. In the ancient world, a king's birthday was a huge deal, often marked by showing absolute power, which meant pardoning some prisoners and executing others. This was the ultimate day of reckoning.
And verses 21 and 22 give us the exact fulfillment of what Joseph predicted. Pharaoh makes his royal decrees right there at the feast. He restores the chief cupbearer, who once again puts the cup right into Pharaoh's hand. But he hangs the chief baker exactly as Joseph had said. The main takeaway here is that the text completely validates Joseph. It proves his God-given accuracy without a single shadow of a doubt. Every single detail happened perfectly.
But then we hit verse 23, the bitter end of the chapter. The text reads, "Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him." Man, just let that crushing reality sink in for a second. Joseph did everything right. He interpreted the dream perfectly. He asked for one incredibly simple, totally justifiable favor. The cupbearer gets his entire life back, goes back to the luxury of the palace, and just completely wipes Joseph from his memory. He's left behind in the dark, entirely forgotten by the very person he helped save.
Let's move to section 4, clarifying the text.
There's this really fascinating Hebrew idiom Joseph uses in verses 13 and 19, Nasar Rosh, which means to lift up the head. Joseph brilliantly uses this exact same phrase to describe 2 totally opposite outcomes. In ancient times, lifting the head meant to count someone or single them out from a group. For the cupbearer, Joseph says Pharaoh will lift up his head, meaning he'll elevate him and restore his honor. But for the baker, Joseph says Pharaoh will literally lift his head from off him, meaning physical execution. It is a masterful, if slightly chilling, use of wordplay to communicate drastically different fates using the exact same terminology.
Also, back in verse 15, remember how Joseph said he was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews? This specific reference points to the region of Canaan, where his ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had settled. Now, why mention that to an Egyptian official? Well, by calling himself a Hebrew, Joseph is making it crystal clear that he is a foreigner who was unjustly stolen from his homeland. He's completely distinguishing himself from the local Egyptian criminals who might have actually deserved to be in that dungeon.
Let's transition to section 5, Ideas and Life Lessons.
When we look at the literal events of this chapter, Joseph displays some incredibly practical character traits we can all learn from. First, maintaining faith in dark places. Even though he's suffering massive injustice, he doesn't become bitter or self-absorbed. He actually pays attention to the emotional needs of the people right in front of him. Second, he gives credit to God. He could have easily pretended to be a powerful magician to gain leverage over these guys, but instead, he stays totally humble. And third, speaking the truth with absolute integrity. Imagine how terrifying it must have been to look a high-ranking official in the eye and say, "You're going to be executed in 3 days." He didn't sugarcoat it to protect himself. He just delivered the honest truth. But perhaps the deepest lesson from chapter 40 comes from that painful reality of being forgotten. The cupbearer's failure is just a gut punch. Yet, the lesson is about enduring patiently without losing your spirit. Joseph did the right thing, helped someone out, and was totally forgotten by man. But as his broader story will eventually show, he was never forgotten by God. Doing good matters, even when people fail to recognize it or return the favor. True character is doing the right thing, even when the reward never comes. And finally, Section 6, Recap and Conclusion.
To quickly summarize the chapter, we saw two high-ranking Egyptian officials get thrown into the very same dungeon as Joseph. We watched Joseph humbly interpret their puzzling dreams, explicitly crediting God and delivering both good news and hard truth. We saw those interpretations fulfilled perfectly on Pharaoh's birthday, and we ended on that devastating note where the restored cupbearer completely forgets Joseph.
So, I leave you with this provocative question to think about. What happens when you do everything right, yet still find yourself waiting in the dark? It's a profound test of character that Joseph faced head-on, and honestly, it's a reality many of us will face in our own lives. Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.